Welcome back. We start with US President Donald Trump, who has become the third president in the nation's history to be impeached by the House of Representatives. The House voted to impeach Trump for obstruction of Congress and abuse of power related to his dealings with Ukraine. This report has the details.
Donald Trump has formally joined the exclusive club of impeached presidents. He now faces trial in the Senate, but his removal from the White House will be very difficult in a Republican-controlled upper house.
I've made up my mind about the accusations. I've seen the transcript. I understand the basic tenets of what Sunderland's saying is hearsay upon hearsay. I've never believed this was an impeachable offense. I've got no problem with the phone call. The guy ran on corruption, and there's been questions for a long time about why the guy was fired.
On Tuesday, Trump accused House Speaker Nancy Pelosi of declaring war on American democracy in a 6-page open letter. The Republican Party has been united in supporting Trump while he continues his aggressive approach.
They're lousy politicians, but they have two things. They're vicious. They're the most vicious people. The Republicans aren't as vicious. They may learn to be vicious after going through this stuff. But the other thing, the Democrats always stick together. Now think of it. 3 Democrats went over to our side, no Republicans. It's unheard of.
Donald Trump's predecessors, Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton, were the only U.S. presidents to face impeachment. Johnson was accused of 11 impeachment articles, while Clinton faced perjury and obstruction of justice inquiries.
In a related development, thousands of people have come out in favor and against the impeachment of President Donald Trump. Demonstrators gathered in Michigan to condemn the impeachment, while its supporters staged rallies in Colorado, California, and Arizona. Trump supporters lined up for hours ahead of his Michigan campaign rally. Protesters branded the probe shameful, saying the president had committed no crime. Anti-Trump rallies in Oakland, Denver, and San Francisco welcomed the constitutional process taken up by the House Democrats. Moving on to the U.S. Congress, which has decided to impose extra sanctions on banks and companies dealing with North Korea. The sanctions bill is named after Otto Warmbier, an American student who died in the U.S. after being detained in North Korea for over a year. The bill lists mandatory sanctions on North Korean textile imports and exports of coal and other minerals. Yesterday, a bipartisan group of U.S. senators warned Pyongyang of further economic embargo in response to any provocations. Earlier, China and Russia proposed a draft UN resolution calling for some sanctions against North Korea to be lifted. In a related development, China and Japan have both agreed to work on North Korea's denuclearization while tensions grow between Washington and Pyongyang. The understanding was reached after a meeting between Japanese Defense Minister Taro Kono and his Chinese counterpart General Wei Fengze in Beijing. The two sides discussed the importance of fulfilling UN Security Council resolutions on North Korea. Expressing a desire to increase mutual trust, Kono said that there are still concerns between the two countries, including the East China Sea. Tokyo and Beijing also decided on strengthening communication. This is the first visit by a Japanese defense chief to China since 2009. The Indian government has suspended mobile network services in New Delhi and Uttar Pradesh to stop protests against a controversial citizenship law. Police have detained hundreds across the country for defying a ban on protests, including prominent historian Ramachandra Guha. Mobile companies Vodafone and Airtel confirmed they received government orders to suspend networks. Activist Yogendra Yadav says he has been arrested with others at Lal Killa in New Delhi. Leading Indian historian Ramachandra Guha and 30 other protesters have been arrested in the city of Bengaluru in Karnataka. Meanwhile, authorities have shut down 18 metro bus stations in New Delhi to stop the protests. The government also imposed Section 144 in the states of Lucknow and Uttar Pradesh. Meanwhile, Pakistan Army says it will befittingly respond to any Indian misadventure along the line of control. Earlier, Indian Army Chief Bipin Rawat said the situation along the LOC can escalate anytime. Military spokesman General Asif Ghafoor said Indian Army Chief's provocative statement is an effort to divert world's attention from citizenship law protests. Earlier, Pakistan Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said India has partially removed the fence on the LOC in 5 sectors. In a letter to the UNSC, he said India has deployed BrahMos anti-tank guided and spike missiles for use across the LOC. Moreover, Pakistan has rejected India's baseless allegations of prosecution of religious minorities in the country. Citing pre-partition data of 1941 census, India claimed minorities declined from 23% in 1947 to 3.7% in 2011 in Pakistan. In a statement, Pakistan Foreign Office said Delhi has omitted 2 major events of migration in 1947 and separation of East Pakistan. The office said total population of minorities in Pakistan has increased by over 0.5% in 47 years. It also said the Hindu population in Pakistan has increased from 1.5% in 1951 to nearly 2% in 1998. U.S. Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad says Washington is approaching an important phase of the Afghan peace process. Khalilzad made this statement after completing a visit to Kabul and meeting the country's leadership. The envoy has called his 2-day Kabul consultation a productive trip. He said the parties discussed ways of reducing violence and opening dialogue. Khalilzad also met the U.S. ambassador in Kabul, John Bass, and the U.S. and NATO forces commander in Afghanistan, General Austin Scott Miller. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says the fate of the world's Muslims is no longer in the hands of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council. Speaking at the Kuala Lumpur summit, Erdogan said the world is bigger than the 5 veto power states. He said despite attempts to silence Turkey, Ankara insists on calling attention to Palestine, the Rohingya, Libya, Somalia, and Syria. Also speaking at the summit, Iran's President Hassan Rouhani condemned the US for threatening sanctions on other countries. Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad said the Muslim world is passing through a state of crisis, and the summit may find solutions to these challenges. A court in the Philippines has found the senior members of a political clan guilty of masterminding the 2009 massacre of 57 people. Members of 3 generations of the influential Amapu Chan family were among those sentenced to life imprisonment on multiple counts of murder. Over 28 people received the maximum penalty of life imprisonment. The Amapu Chan family is a dynasty in the southern province of Maguanduru. They had been accused of conspiring to ambush the convoy of a rival clan. Among the casualties were the wife and relatives of a rival candidate, lawyers, and 32 media workers. The brazen attack was the country's single worst case of election violence. Lebanon's caretaker Prime Minister Saad Hariri has announced he will no longer pursue the top job. In a statement, Hariri said he will be involved in selecting a new premier despite his withdrawal. It remains unclear who will be the next prime minister, with Hariri's Future Movement parliamentary bloc set to meet later this morning. Any prime minister must be approved by a majority of the 128-member legislature. Hariri made his announcement 50 days after resigning the post against a background of massive protests against the ruling elite. Bolivia's prosecutors have issued an arrest warrant for exiled ex-president Evo Morales on sedition and terrorism charges. The interim government claims Morales promoted violent clashes that led to 35 deaths before and after he left office. Police have confirmed the warrant. Last month, Interior Minister Arturo Morello filed a criminal complaint against the former socialist leader. The case against Morales centers on a video where he is allegedly directing a Bolivian man to plan roadblocks.
It's not possible that Mr. Evo Morales, after the people believed in him so much, orders his people to be killed, orders that food shouldn't enter the cities. This is a crime against humanity.
In a tweet, Morales claims the evidence is invented and urged authorities to probe the deaths during the unrest and not him. More in this bulletin. In Spain, thousands of pro-independence protesters took to the streets of Barcelona during a football match between Barcelona and Real Madrid. 46 demonstrators were injured and 5 others arrested in clashes with the police. Thousands of fans inside the stadium held up banners urging the government to hold talks with Catalan separatists. More protesters gathered outside the stadium chanting independence and calling for people they described as political prisoners to be freed. The match was postponed in October over protests against the conviction of 9 Catalan separatist leaders. We have a lot more coming up right after this short break, so stay tuned. Welcome back. In the UK, the Queen will set out the Conservative government's agenda for the year ahead in today's state opening of Parliament. This follows Boris Johnson's decisive election win last week. Legislation to take the UK out of the EU on January 31st will be among the more than 20 bills announced. Downing Street said an ambitious program of far-reaching domestic reforms will be put up before MPs, with health services among the priorities. When the pageantry is over, the Parliament will be asked to immediately begin ratifying the Brexit agreement PM Johnson negotiated in October. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has criticized member states for violating a UN-imposed arms embargo on Libya. Guterres described Libya's situation as similar to cancer, spreading instability and conflicts in several parts of Africa. He said it is frustrating that the Security Council's embargo and requests for a ceasefire are not being respected. Guterres said several member states are providing weapons to both sides of the conflict every week. Australia has yet again experienced its hottest day as the national average temperature reached a record 41.9 degrees Celsius. This beats the previous record set only 24 hours earlier by 1 degree Celsius. Today's 40.9 degrees Celsius record eclipsed the previous high of 40.3 degrees Celsius set in 2013. Meanwhile, a 7-day state of emergency has been declared in New South Wales. State authorities are currently fighting 100 bushfires in a crisis that has lasted months. More intense heat was forecast for the rest of the week. Prime Minister Scott Morrison's government has been criticized for its response to the fires and its climate policies. The Global Alliance on Health and Pollution says India led the world in pollution-linked deaths in 2017, followed by China and Nigeria. In a report, the body found pollution to be the largest environmental cause of premature death on the planet, claiming 8 million lives. In 2017, India and China suffered 2.3 million and 1.8 million deaths, respectively. The report says India has been increasing industrial pollution, with bad sanitation and contaminated indoor air a factor in poor communities. It has divided risk factors into air, water, occupational, and lead. The agency said pollution is a global crisis which worsens every day. At the U.S. border in Ciudad Juarez, Mexican asylum seekers are fighting freezing temperatures while they wait for their immigration court hearings. Many worry about their young children getting sick. Mexican officials concerned about the health of the migrants are trying to move them to safer shelters. More in this report.
In recent months, Ciudad Juarez has been crowded with Mexican immigrants seeking asylum in the U.S. The waiting list includes 1,200 people, of which 550 are staying in camps, combating freezing temperatures through the weekend. Nearly half of these are children under the age of 12.
We are deciding right now whether we should go back because the cold is really bad and we have children with us. They are getting sick and we are disappointed because we haven't been able to cross.
Immigration advocates say President Donald Trump's entry policies are exposing vulnerable populations to crime and extortion.
The people need to know they can't be in these public spaces for the good of their sons and daughters who are exposed to crime and above all the inclement weather.
Mexican officials are attempting to arrange a meeting with their US counterparts to discuss conditions in the camps. US Customs and Border Protection has not responded to those requests.
In Afghanistan, decades of conflict have left the war-torn nation strewn with landmines and other deadly devices. Last year, 10 children from an Afghan family met with a familiar tragedy on their way to the school. This is a short report on the family of amputees.
A tragedy no child should bear. 10 children from the same family were on the way to school when they picked up an unexploded motor bomb on the ground, a common enough sight in Afghanistan. The deadly device went off. 7 of them survived, but they lost at least one limb each. More than a year later, they are struggling to adapt.
The day when the blast took place, it was a bad day. I saw my brothers and sisters soaked in blood, lying on the ground. My entire family were destroyed.
The children are tutored at home, but sometimes they have to go to school for exams. It's not an easy journey. Blisters develop when their artificial limbs rub against their skin, a painful reminder of their new reality.
I feel very sad when I see other girls walk towards school and I cannot walk like them. War still rages on here.
War still rages on here, even though the Taliban are in negotiations with the US for some sort of peace settlement. A resolution still seems far off. Decades of conflict have left the nation strewn with landmines and other deadly devices. The UN says more than 900 children were killed in 2018. Another 7,000 were wounded. And though hers was taken away, Rabia hopes other children in Afghanistan can still enjoy a normal childhood.
If you have not traveled to Pakistan, maybe now is the right time, as Condé Nast, one of the world's best travel portals, has listed the country as one of the top tourist destinations for 2020. And to capitalize on this situation, authorities in Pakistan are injecting more money in the tourism sector. More in this report by Sumaira Khan.
Pakistan's efforts to promote tourism have started yielding results thanks to an improved law and order situation. As the year draws to a close, many travel magazines and publications have released annual top countries lists for aspiring travelers looking for adventure in the upcoming year. One such publication, Condé Nast Traveler magazine, ranked Pakistan #1 in its 20 best places for tourism in the 2020 list. Local authorities are also working tirelessly to revive the industry.
Basic infrastructure needs to be there, and that is the responsibility of the government. So we have already allocated 5 billion rupees and the roads have been approved. It will start construction maybe in this month, in January, inshallah, hopefully. After the completion of these roads, it will be new destination, 14 new destination, which we desperately needed. And the cost of it is 5 billion rupees.
Atif Khan appreciated Condé Nast's feedback on Pakistan. He recommended several relatively unknown spots in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa for curious travelers. These include Maragzar, Godar Lake and Bashigram.
Pakistan's law and order and security has improved a lot in the last couple of years, and hopefully it will be much better in the coming years. We are having a tourism police which will be on ground before this coming season.
Pakistan is home to over 100 peaks above 7,000 meters. 5 of the 14 highest peaks in the world, the 8,000ers, are in Pakistan. Previously, UK-based newspaper The Independent declared Pakistan the second best tourist destination for 2020. Reporting for Indus News, Sumaira Khan, Islamabad.
In Mali, No train has left Bamako's colonial-era railway station for over 18 months. For almost 100 years, the service connected Mali to neighboring Senegal. This report tells how railway workers are trying to preserve the station and its memories.
For several months now, no train has passed through this colonial-era station in Bamako. For almost 100 years, the Dakar-Bamako Express had connected Mali's capital to neighbouring Senegal. But since May 2018, the station's green carriages have remained stationary.
On a day like today, a Monday, Train 12 departed. It was euphoric. People were crying here, and it was a reunion. Today it is something that we miss very much. You see how the station is dilapidated today. It has become a dump. The tills no longer work. Everyone's at a standstill because there are no trains.
Since the line was closed, some 430 rail workers are out of work. An ex-railway worker, Moussa Traoré, is working on a 4-ton collection of documents which tell the history of the Bamako to Dakar line.
The archives really fall within the framework of the preservation of the nation's memory, the memory also really of the railway. Within the railway, there is the exploitation side of history, but also the economic side, the historical, and there is also the cultural side.
A rail rehabilitation plan is being discussed with several partners, including the World Bank. At the end of 2018, Senegal and Mali each promised to contribute €15 million as a boost. But according to the trade unionists, the money has still not yet been paid.
Amazon, Apple and Google are partnering up to improve the compatibility of their smart home products. They have called the scheme Project Connected Home over IP.
Three of the world's biggest tech companies, Apple, Amazon and Google, have put aside years of competition to create a joint technology standard. The new benchmark is aimed at smart home products like Amazon's Echo, Apple's HomePod and Google's Home. The businesses say they want to develop and promote a new royalty-free connectivity standard. They said it would increase compatibility among smart home products, with security as a fundamental feature.
Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.